Alright, it's time to take Ravenloft to the next step. This is Van Richten's Guide to Ravenloft. It lets you not only expand the Curse of Strahd adventure sourcebook, it lets you delve into other uh, dark lands and everything. So this is, like I said, a guidebook that helps you expand not only Barovia, where Curse of Strahd is set, it lets you expand on other planes of dread. And so, like usual, like all source books, it begins with the guide and shows like a brief description of what each chapter actually is about and everything. So then, it also gets into the details of you can, in a sense, run different types of horror type campaigns and everything. So this is what this book is all about and everything. So this first part is pretty much just like any other guidebook or source book. It's pretty much like a general overview of what you'll find in this particular source book and everything. So, and it gives like a brief description on the secrets and everything, as you can see, and it breaks down ideas that you can use. And again, this first part is just pretty much the generic overview of the whole book, and it gives you the kind of generic background that you need to run not only an adventure beyond the Curse of Strahd in Ravenloft, but in the other realms of Dread, which tend to be like a demi-plane in a sense. Like if you get into the planes of existence, like usually like the material plane is the world that the most campaigns are set on, and these are like in a sense a demi-plane that exists in between planes, like the material plane, the astral plane, the concept of the heavens, the hells, and where the gods reside, and demons and devils reside as well. And so it gets into character creation, so you can run a whole horror based campaign and everything. And so it gives you the whole concept of the character creation for a horror specific campaign that you run within these. So it gives you the whole chapter background information on the whole character creation that you would do for a specific campaign based on just this source book. Now you can kind of use this and drag it into your own campaign setting. So if you wanted to, in a sense, take some of these themes and introduce them to a campaign that you're already running, you got these ideas and everything. So it gives in a sense, new type of in a sense races through. You can see here the Dampier, which is kind of like a half human, half vampire creature. So what comes into mind is there's some video games. I can't remember the one that's off the top of my head, but there was some movies that they made and everything that Dampiers appear right in it. So maybe someone can drop in the comments and mention the video games and that. I mean, like I said, I can't think off the top of my head and everything that these appear in. So, and then of course you also got a new one, Hexblood. So all these are geared towards the planes of dread that Barovia is a part of, which is where Curse of Strahd is. And so this gives you in a sense, and also gives you a reborn. And the Dampier, of course, like I said, is half vampire, half vampire, half human, or whatever race. And then the Hex Lord, you could in a sense kind of think of as a necromancer. And the reborn here, what comes to mind for me is the monster Frankenstein. So this concept for the reborn race, that's what comes to mind for me, is the whole idea of Frankenstein when you're building one of these. So you can, in a sense, kind of run any type of a typical horror creature that you find, that like I said, Frankenstein, vampires. You can even introduce your typical werewolves. And so it gets here into like the, as you can see, dark gifts and everything, so that like each of your characters can have like special abilities, and does give like the typical tables that you can either roll or pick on like stuff that like you can concepts for your actual character as well. So like that's what this whole chapter is about. Is like as you can see, is basically just character creation and giving you ideas on how to make your own character for this specific type of campaign set. And of course, as a DM, what you can use this is like a way to, in a sense, introduce NPCs into a existing campaign that you're already running and everything, to introduce uh, maybe like concepts that are introduced in this for like the different types of like horror that you can kind of like subtly in a sense introduce into like maybe you're running a Forgotten Realms campaign set and you kind of want to introduce some of these concepts and everything. So this gives you ideas, so you can not necessarily have your PCs run like a whole new campaign, but you can create NPCs and kind of like have them go off on like side quests or something and introduce these concepts. So that's the good thing about like a character creation in here for the GMs, is it gives you like ideas that you can use to build NPCs to introduce new ideas. And of course, like usual, it does have like the backgrounds as well, so you can like flesh out characters even more. And of course it does have like a usual, like just like other character creations, it does have your ideals, your bonds, your flaws that you can either roll, like just like these, any table that's like this, you can either roll and or pick and everything. So it definitely gives like a whole background and even more skills, more sets, and more like tools of the trade to expand campaigns and everything. And of course, you got like character subclasses that you can like kind of multi-class into, or get like other ideas to just, in a sense, like go off on, and not just a subclass but a whole class itself as well. And of course, like you got a whole table here where the trinkets for like to kind of like give you even like devices and stuff that like it can even further flesh out the campaign as well. So yeah, like chapter 2, it gets into like the actual domains. So like here you can see like it's getting into like the starting of creating a Dark Lord. So a Dark Lord would be like Strahd von Zarovich, for the main antagonist of the Curse of Strahd, and you can see his arch enemy, the Lich Aslan Rex. So these two are kind of rival Dark Lords. So like what this chapter does is it gives you the ability to create like a Dark Lord who, in a sense, controls that particular realm of dread and everything. So like for instance, like Strahd von Zarovich is the vampire in the Curse of Strahd, and he controls the whole like land of Barovia, which is in a sense like a sub plane of dread that you travel into in the whole Curse of Strahd campaign adventure. So, and this, in a sense, lets you create your own villain. So like and it goes into depth on like how like you create them, and like how the Dark Lord actually became a Dark Lord. And so like it gets into like the overview of domain that you're going to create. So like for instance, like the Aslan Rex Lich character, you could create a character based off him, create his domain, do an overview, that get the cultural specifics that led him down that path and everything. So and it gives you ideas as a DM on how to actually set up like your own specific domain, so you don't necessarily have to use just Curse of Strahd. So you could run Curse of Strahd and use this to kind of expand on it. So like, or you could use this separate from the Curse of Strahd. So it then gets into like the actual like different types of genres of horror. So body horror could, in a sense, insinuate like torture and stuff like that. So, and of course, you got like the cosmic horror. So something like that comes to mind with cosmic horror is like Lovecraft's Cthulhu. you can kind of like expand that to cosmic, so like a dark fantasy as well. So like it kind of has like a dark twist to something. You could also like get into like the folklore, so like monsters that come up in like folklores that have been passed down from generation to generation. So like maybe area Pacific uh, monsters that like reside in each area. So of course you can also do ghost stories, like the stereotypical stories you tell around a fire. You could run a campaign based on one of those stories that you tell as well. And of course like a good old gothic horror. So this gives you different ideas on how to like run different horrors. So like of course we can all relate to like disaster horrors, like with the hurricanes, floods, droughts. You can run any type like that, and of course like the occult, getting into like this the supernatural and everything. So like sort of like the TV show Supernatural. And of course like it does give you like an instance to do like a psychological horror. So like which could become completely demented. And of course good old slasher horror, just think of like the movies like Friday the 13th movies. And like of course you got also Hatchet, which is a spin-off of Friday the 13th. So this gives you another like type of like horror. So then with chapter 3, it gets into that the actual pre-created domains of Ravenloft. So like it goes into like explaining like the myths, like for instance like how you get into Ravenloft in the Curse of Strahd in the first hand. It explains that, and so how you can get into the actual domains of Dread. And of course it gives you an explanation of how magic and the metaphysics work in these realms. So, and then it also explains life in these domains, and then explains all the different backgrounds, the currency, language, religion, times. It gives you the background information that you need to be able to further run this campaign, so you're not just completely shooting from the hip and winging it, and gives you ideas on how to face the actual Dark Lords and everything. So, and it actually goes into the gives features of the actual like settings for each particular realm of Dread. So like for instance like it the Barovia with the Curse of Strahd. So this is just one of the many realms of Dread that you can like run, and gives you adventure ideas and like on how to like background information for like Strahd. So like you don't necessarily have to run Curse of Strahd, or like if you do, you can, and he comes back to life, you can run like yet another adventure in Barovia with Strahd still as the main antagonist. So this one also goes into like other realms. So like here you can see like the Loot Spur. It gives you like a whole domain information on this realm as well. And of course like it also gives like maps of like the actual like each realm of Dread, so you can have like at least a back you know where is where, and you can have like the geography, so you're not like having to make up stuff on the fly as well when it comes to like the geography and the map. So I mean, you getting back to like the creation of Realm of Dread, if you're someone who likes to make maps and kind of doing the whole 9 yards of creating stuff, you can do that as well. So this part gives you like just kind of like, in a sense, the background information for pre-made ones. So like you can just basically like jump right in. So like they got like another map of like another realm of Dread. So like and of course like with the myths and everything, all of these are all in a sense interconnected, so you can travel from one to the other as well. So you don't necessarily have to stick in Barovia. You could go from Barovia to like the Lutzgard or whatever that you saw earlier. And of course you can also travel into like another one here, like this one, the Mentalio, or however, like I'm probably pronouncing it like pathetically, but like usual how I tend to pronounce stuff and everything. So that this chapter, like I said, gives you like a whole background information on several different types of like the realms of Dread that you can run. And of course each one has their own Dark Lord, just like Strahd is the Dark Lord of Barovia. So, and of course it also gives you like different tables that you can use for encounters. And so these tables are always great tool for DMs, because like if you're looking for something on the fly, you pull up this table and just roll a dice, or you can just like look through the whole list, like, oh hey, yeah, like and pick and choose type of deal. So those tables are always invaluable for DMs to be able to like come up with something if you need something like last minute, like the typical you plan for people to go right and then you end up going left type of deal. So this is this whole chapter on how like the background information for each individual realm of dread. And so like I'll reiterate again, you don't necessarily have to use these if you're one of those DMs that likes just doing all the legwork and creating your own. But it does give you all this to kind of be able to like jump right in case you're running this for the first time, and gives you all the background information, so you don't necessarily have to do all that background information. Of course, like this one's kind of in depth because there's so many different realms of dread that you can do, and of course the just like anything, the only limit to running like a campaign like this is pretty much your imagination. So like you can take any and all or none of these concepts and kind of like figure out which ones you want to use, which ones you want to throw out, and like kind of go whatever way you want to. So like the only limitation is your imagination and like the types of adventures you want to run, and your pretty much like time limitations. So and of course the stereotypical like always trying to sync up to get the D&D groups together. That's always like a challenge as well in modern days with all our busy schedules and everything. So those are pretty much the only limitations to like a book like this that gives you like in a sense the foundation to run these types of campaigns. So like I said, I'll reiterate, this chapter is very in depth because there's so many different types of campaign settings that you can use for these realms of dread and everything. And of course, you don't necessarily have to use these realms of dread. You can take the concepts and kind of put them into like a campaign that you're running. So like the Forgotten Realms campaign setting that I mentioned earlier, if you're running a campaign maybe in Waterdeep, you can take some of these concepts and maybe they're investigating like a horror, like something like probably like a psychological like investigation deep in Waterdeep, underneath Waterdeep or something, and in a sense introduce these concepts into the campaign that you've already are running as well. So that's the great thing about source books, especially like this. It gives you new ideas and concepts, and like like in the character creation, gives you new ways to introduce NPCs, or like maybe like you're introducing a new character. Someone's a new person is joining the group, so you could have them run one, and they want to run one of those characters. So the options are, like I said, completely limitless. So like this, just like any source book, helps you expand upon the actual concepts and ideas for any campaign that you are running. So of course now we're getting into like the actual like NPCs that you can use that are like in a sense pre-made dark lords that you can kind of like use it, and it gives you NPCs for each in a sense campaign setting. So like this chapter is actually it gives you even more context for like understanding the horror, what you're expecting, how to prepare for it, and basically like it helps the DM set up for this type of gameplay. So like as a player, you could read it and so understand like what you kind of get like a basic understanding of what kind of like campaign setting you'll be getting into, and if it's actually for you. So like people are familiar with Curse of Strahd remember the Taroka deck. So it's kind of like a tarot in our modern context is kind of like a tarot deck type of deal, and it gives all types of like different ideas that you can use again, build in upon this whole previous few chapters that you can do and everything. So that's the great thing about this. It not only expands on the Curse of Strahd, where you can run like campaigns after that adventure. It also like expands into other realms of dread, and of course, just like any other source book, it does give like yeah, in a sense like monster stats, like lets you know use these as like in a sense like NPCs, so like pre-made NPCs, and of course it gets even further into how like you actually run adventures and everything. So like the indispensable uh, tables that are great for DMs. That yeah, and of course I'm sure everyone's familiar with the occult, like became popular in the 19th century. The seances, it goes into that and how you can use that and kind of like use it as like a divination type deal to in sense create like a catalyst to get people interested in the adventure and everything. So like and it gives like a whole uh start this last part is the actual like adventure that they do that you can use as like a introductory to the realms of dread. So like a quick can't a quick adventure, so you don't necessarily have to use the first Strahd to get into the realms of dread. You can use that as well, and of course, it goes even further into this. And then, just like every other source book, it also gives like a chapter on like the actual monsters that you'll most likely find in these settings. And of course, it gives you like all the stats that you need for each typical monster. So not only are these specific to these types of realms, what you can do is use these to kind of like I said, introduce into other campaigns. So it gives you like the added benefit of new monsters that you can introduce into a existing campaign. So you don't necessarily have to have these as like a realm specific creatures or monsters that are just going through like the realms of dread. You, like I said, you can introduce them into an existing campaign. So like if you find one of these like monsters that like oh I want to kind of like mess with my players, so I'm going to use one of these and really go maybe getting back to that psychological horror type campaign for these dread lords, these dread realms. You can use like a kind of like these monsters as, in a sense like a kind of like a psychological horror type of deal to introduce them into like a other type of campaign. So this is just like another source book that you can use, even though just like any other source book, the only book that you pretty much would absolutely need to run is the player's handbook. So this source book is just like pretty much all the other source books are optional. But if you're someone who isn't into horror and like the occult and like pretty much the darker side of stuff, this is definitely one that you could pick up for running something to that effect as well. So this is just like any and all the other source books. It's just a another tool that you can use to further your campaign sentence and everything. And I'll end this by reiterating, even though this is great for running horror-based campaign sentence, it's not necessary, because all you like reiterate, you just need the player's handbook. You can in a sense do like a lot of your own legwork, but the great thing about source books, especially like this, is it gives you a lot more information. So like you don't necessarily, as not only a DM but as a player, not have to do as much legwork as or thinking. You can pull up this book and kind of like, okay, well here's these concepts for this character creation. So here's what I want to run as a PC. So it gives you more ammunition, information, and stuff to be able to run more campaigns and be able to like in a sense jump into something like this a lot easier